Have you thanked a local journalist today?
Anybody who covered Operation Midway Blitz, I had tear gas thrown at me. I had to learn how to use a gas mask. Really terrifying time.
Coming off one of the most challenging years ever for local U.S. reporters, the historic 19th Century Club in Oak Park, Illinois, gathered a panel of journalists and a gerontologist to assess the present and future of local news media. I'm Charlie Meyerson of ChicagoPublicSquare.com, and I was privileged to moderate alongside Monica Eng of Axios Chicago, Manny Ramos of Block Club Chicago, Max Reinsdorf, general manager of the Newswell Chicago newspapers, and gerontologist Dr. Lydia Manning. And now, in a Chicago Public Square podcast, here's the way it sounded, Saturday, May 9th, 2026, beginning with a kind introduction from one of the organizers, Chris Horry.
Charlie comes into my home every morning at 10 o'clock via email, and he can come into yours as well. Charlie curates one of the best email newsletters that talks about what's relevant in business, in Chicago news, in finance, and just cool things. It's free, and with that, meet Charlie.
This is the best of times and the worst of times for the news business. Worst, of course, because the tides of audience and advertising have eroded circulation and revenue. The best because, well, this is the kind of social and political climate that journalism was built for and that the First Amendment was written for. We have no shortage of great reporting, even as many media organizations, corporate overlords are bending their knees. Look no further than the 2026 Pulitzers announced this week, rife with remarkable work speaking truth to power, especially notably here in Chicago, where my and my fellow panelist Monica Eng's alma mater, Tribune, took the local reporting prize for its coverage of the administration's militarized sweep of the Chicago area. But anyone who's compared video of the Tribune staff celebrating that win to similar celebrations at the paper's former home, we used to call it Tribune Tower, couldn't help but notice that what once would have been a cheering staff of at least a couple of hundred people, this week was down to a few dozen. Sunday papers, where advertising vastly outweighed editorial pages, are a thing of the past. It's now just the reverse. And yet, even as big news organizations here and around the world shrink, the digital revolution has leveled the playing field for a new generation of journalists, some of them with us today. All right, the title of this session is The Future of Local Media. And before we get to the future, though, let's talk about the present. How do you perceive the Chicago area's current media landscape? Manny.
I think the current landscape is inspiring. As you just mentioned, we still had a bunch of award-winning reporters that are fanning out around the city to report on crucial issues like Operation Blitz. But it's not just your major papers like the Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Tribune, or Cranes anymore. We've seen sort of an introduction of new media sort of enter the arena here in Chicago. So Block Club Chicago, for an example. We also had Southside Weekly. We had, just as everywhere else throughout the city, Hyde Park Herald, the Austin Weekly. These are all very crucial papers in the city of Chicago. They're sort of expanding its coverage every day. So while there is much reason to be yearning for a past, I do see there is prospective future as well.
Max.
So this is my job to evaluate the media landscape in Chicago, so cut me off when I go too long. But I first agree with Manny that the landscape in Chicago itself is inspiring, and for those that look across the board nationally, Chicago is about the strongest local market for independent journalism anywhere in the country. It's a testament to you all. We have a diverse mix of media outlets. The best of them, in my humble opinion, are the nonprofits that we see. All due respect to the for-profits, but it's a nonprofit news operator. I like the nonprofits. But going back to Chicagoland, Chicago is strong. Surrounding Chicago areas are less strong. The suburbs do not have the same strength of news report that the city has. we at Newswell Chicago, which operates the Wednesday Journal, which many of you have in your laps, along with its 3 sister papers, are aiming to reverse that. We are right now seeing the same organization that overtook Tribune Publishing in 2021, Alden, make a very strong offer of a group of suburban pubs, the Daily Herald, based out of Arlington Heights. And that gives me pause. I think that stands to weaken their news report. And at Newswell Chicago, I want to be part of the proof that addresses that we continues to provide stronger news to the suburban community. So yes, Chicago has a very strong news network within the city. In the Birds, we got some work to do, and that's what we're here to do.
Monica, what do you see when you look out at the Chicago area's media landscape?
Well, it is inspiring, but I'll be the downer here. When I started the Sun-Times in 1985, we had an enormous newsroom. At the Tribune, I think we were 500 when I was there, maybe down to 70-ish now. Bureaus all over the world, bureaus all over the nation. When I left the Southtown to go to the Tribune, they're like, "Oh, don't they have an editor just in the color magenta there?" I said, I got there, I was like, "Holy cow!" I read this entire weekend entertainment section of the Southtown, and there are like 15 people on that one section of the Tribune. So yeah, it can be very depressing to see how the funds have changed. How, frankly, when I got to the Tribune, people were retiring millionaires. They had just put 5 kids through college. Now I see the top reporters there making 1/3 of what those people made, half of what I made when I left the Tribune 15 years ago. And having roommates working their butts off and hoping that they can pay back their college loans. So I love the kids that are the young people, I shouldn't say kids, the generation coming into journalism now, but I'm constantly being sent students like, "Oh, I want to be a film critic, I want to be a food writer, I want to be a reporter." And like, "What's your advice for me?" I said, "Marry someone's rich so that you can take this job and not have to worry about, paying back your loans." I wish it was the kind of field where you could put 3 kids through college. I put 2 kids through college though, but I'm the last of Mohicans.
I think I flash back to the day in 1998 when I'd been offered a job at the Tribune, and I was just leaving Tribune Tower and saw the great Rick Kogan standing outside. And Rick Kogan talks like this. And he said, "Oh, man, you ought to take this job here. It's you work for the Tribune. It's like working for the government." And as it turns out, Rick was right, because now working for the government isn't all that secure either. Max, as a top guy at Newswell, whose takeover of those 4 newspapers, I should acknowledge I supported as a member of the soon-to-dissolve Growing Community Media Board. How do you address concerns about the prospect that these local papers are now under the umbrella of an organization based in Arizona?
Great question. And one that Charlie and the rest of the GCM board, when we were contemplating this transaction, spent a lot of time studying, because that the board was the first to raise that very question. It should be known that we retain locally all editorial control. So any of the news report you see or disagree with is ours. It's not any influence from Arizona. We get to decide everything that goes into our papers, on our websites, into our newsletters. I think retaining local control is the most critical part of retaining our identity and thereby retaining our business, right? If we start writing slop based in Arizona, which again, there's no influence to, but if we were to, you guys would stop reading it, we'd be out of business. It'd be a problem. So there's incentive both ways for us to continue to operate independently. I think beyond that, Newswell itself is a nonprofit, the umbrella organization Newswell. We are Newswell Chicago. We won't get into the specifics of like the legal, or it's too confusing, but so Newswell Chicago is a sub of an already nonprofit with its own mandate to create independent journalism. So our parent org is only about making independent journalism, and beyond that, us as the sub brand here in Chicago, we have no influence whatsoever. It's written into what we do, that we make our own independent editorial decisions. And beyond that, I think the question you might be asking broadly is, what about ASU with Newswell? So again, it's a confusing relationship. I can draw a diagram after if you'd like. But there is an agreement between Newswell and the university that there's also no influence whatsoever. Newswell can, at its own discretion, make editorial decisions, and they in turn offer that same freedom to us.
You got a question back there?
What are the key funders Newswell as a nonprofit?
So Newswell National does its own fundraising. That's the group that's headquartered in Arizona. We here locally at Newswell Chicago, you all are our funders. We retain the same group of philanthropic supporters that we had prior to the transactions. I see a gentleman here in a shirt that says support local news, which was part of a program we did back in April, where we did a fundraiser. And if you gave us $100, you got a shirt. We rely on him and the rest of you to do that same exact fundraising. We are still financially dependent on the communities that have supported us to continue supporting us. This transaction did not turn into, manna from heaven, a money cannon. We are not saved. We are better off. We are stronger. We're more sustainable. I have access to far better resources than before. But we still rely on you to subscribe to our papers, subscribe to our newsletters, and to make financial contributions. And I'm not dodging the question. The Newswell national team has its own fundraising, and they rely on foundational support to continue their operations. So they have a big grant from Knight Foundation for one, which is someone we'll target on our own too, and as well as another handful of national foundations.
What functions does the National Newswell do for you as an organization?
So they do a lot. I, for instance, now have access to a development director who is focused on helping me raise funds locally, which is, we did it by committee before, and there are a number of folks in this room who assisted in that effort, and we've been moderately successful. But this allows us to get to the next level. We have on the national staff a product director who's going to help us create better looking newsletters, better looking websites. Again, something we had done by committee in my spare time and the spare time of my colleagues. And operations, accounting, payroll, lawyers, which are extremely expensive, which we now just have on staff and I could call when I have a problem, et cetera, et cetera. So we have all of the benefits of a large national organization, the scale organization, which we did not have before.
As a supporter of Wednesday Journal, long time in Austin Weekly, why did they change leadership?
I came on board with Wednesday Journal's parent at the time, December 24, as a consultant. In the course of about 3 weeks, I saw that the business as it was designed did not have long enough runway to change itself to become sustainable. So we were going to run out of money before we could fix it. That's the rub. And so with that in mind, we had to make really, really hard decisions about how we sustain these treasured local community news outlets. Many of you are longtime supporters of our work. Thank you for that, first and foremost. Your support got us through 45 years of Wednesday journalism. It would not get us through another 45. That's how this industry has changed. So why did we change leadership? Because we recognized that the business was not sustainable and we had to take serious action to address it. And that's what we did.
All right, Monica has worked for newspapers, radio, and now focuses on email. How do you assess the state of each of those news media today?
Well, it's all changing. Newspapers, as I mentioned, the staffs they're tiny. When I started the Sun-Times, we had a fashion editor who went to the London and Paris and Milan shows that money was no problem. Rupert Murdoch owned us and money was coming out of our ears. That is no longer happening. Now they're just firing people in waves and waves and waves. But Tribune still did a great job. Block Club did a great job. Lots of people did a great job covering Operation Midway Bliss, but the resources have just shrunk like crazy. And as you said, that the model was not sustainable anymore. Radio, people are all switching to their smart devices or podcasts, terrestrial, what's called, in your car radio kind of dial thing. That's kind of dying. But I still see a lot of robust action at WBZ as it merges with the Sun-Times, obviously smaller staffs overall. Newsletters, yeah, they're going. The 140,000 subscribers to the Axios newsletter, totally free. If you want to be a member for $25 and have us shout you out on your birthday, you can do that. But it seems to be growing. I'll be honest, when I was poached to go WBZ to Axios, I'm like, newsletter, what's that? I never read that. And now I love it. It kind of caters to short attention spans. Thank God you did that to us, Twitter or an X or whatever. You say we will tell you everything you need to know. It is almost as good as Charlie's newsletter. In 3.5 minutes, we write very succinctly. I was an investigative reporter at the Tribune. I was a features reporter. Anybody remember the Tempo section at the Tribune? Yeah. So I was writing 3,000 word stories and taking a month to do them. No, now I write 300 word stories and I run them in about 15 minutes. No, I mean, but obviously that research takes a lot more time. It is very weird to get your brain around that. but people feel like they're in a rush and they need things like get to the point right effing away. And that is what I do. And I try to tell you exactly what you need to know. I make the phone calls, I write it, I boil it down and distill it as much as possible while still trying to be charming. And that seems to be where things are going. I still get the Tribune sometimes every single day, read Blockload every day. If I were at Oak Park, I'd be reading Wednesday Journal every day, but I read it often anyway. But we are a dying breed. So you got to go where the eyeballs are.
I think newsletters are perfect in terms of just that quick need to get news information out there to people in their inboxes. And we're seeing a real push toward that. But we're also seeing a real push into sort of quick hit video formats like TikTok to sort of get the younger generation into news and sort of understanding what's happening around them. And I think the way that media sort of leverages that is by doing those quick hits, less than a minute, probably less than 15 seconds, honestly, to let folks know what's going on and happening in their area and how to sort of digest that properly.
Lydia, as you study older Americans, older people of the Chicago area, how do you see the various channels of communication, radio, television, newspapers, magazines, digital, serving that older part of our population?
It's a great question. I think it's important to note that when we're thinking about the older population, we need to recognize the extreme diversity and the heterogeneity, right? I mean, some people they're consuming media, using their devices. They want the quick hit. I don't get to the point, 300 words. Other people still crave the newspaper, right? I think it's a very diverse population, and we need to be mindful when we're thinking about media outlets and ways that we communicate, and honoring that not everybody. It's not a one quick fix, if you will, for communicating information.
In your studies of older people, have you seen evolution in how they are consuming news?
Most definitely. I think, we make a lot of assumptions about older adults. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of our ageist biases and practices, particularly in the media I witness. It's hard for me as a gerontologist to not chime in on the editorials and remind people about languaging and phrasing and sort of this. If I hear the silver tsunami one more time, I'm going to lose it. But I think, too, we make assumptions about technology and the digital divide. And if you look at the data, more and more older adults are using technology in large percentages, right? And so, again, not everybody. But I do think, we don't go seek the news anymore. I feel like I can say this across the life course and for all populations, all ages. If we encounter it, we can't get away from it, right? And so I think it becomes more of a, how do you filter it, process, and make sense of it?
Max, how does demographics play out in the business decisions that are being made at our regional newspaper publisher?
So I don't know that I do consider demographics for sure. I would say, generally speaking, it is fair to say that print readers skew older and newsletter website readers skew younger. It's not like completely true 100% of the time. There's, people read everything. But I guess when we consider demographics, I know that my existing circulation base is generally older. It's actually, in the surveys we've done, it is typically older, educated white women are our subscribers. That is our demo, which, from a marketing perspective, is really good. It's a good demo to be in. So thank you to you all looking at the room, and thank you to you all. And we're going to continue making a killer print product for all of you. That's our charge. You are still there with a financial relationship with us through your print subscription, and we're going to continue providing a paper to you. It is still, even at a smaller scale, a fairly lucrative place for us to be. It is not, making money hand over fist like the good days of old at Tribune and yada, yada, yada. But as long as we still have enough folks to support this thing, we're going to keep doing it. That's nowhere on our roadmap is us getting out print, just to be clear. Beyond that, I just want to spend a minute talking about newsletters, because I think our newsletter product is I'm a younger guy, forgive me. I think it's our best product, and it's certainly our fastest growing product. So that I think, as my colleagues up here have said, that's where the audience is going. Yeah, they're also on Instagram and they're on TikTok and they're on Twitter, whatever, which is something we're going to get to down the road. But in the immediate future, our newsletter audience is up almost 50% year on year. That's killer for us. That's enough for us to feel really confident of our future. So, right now we're going to continue serving this older, white, educated, female demographic with our print product. And anyone else that wants to pick up a print copy. And we're going to keep growing our newsletters because that's where the audience is.
As someone who's maintained since the late 90s that the email newsletter is the logical successor to the daily newspaper, the hourly radio newscast, the nightly TV news. Thank you. Question for each of you. We'll just go down the line, start with Monica. Do you watch local TV news? If so, how recently and how frequently?
I don't really. Unlike my colleague Justin Kaufman, he watches 10 o'clock news every night and goes and changes our newsletter in case anything shifted. So I leave that up to him. I should say I've just been hired as a paid contributor at Fox 32, so I will probably start watching that. It's not the same as Fox News, and as anything I have to say about people that normally like Fox News, they're not going to censor me. So I would probably start watching that. And I do a Chicago Weekend Review for TTW, but I won't lie to you and pretend I watch 10 o'clock news every night because Justin does it for me.
Manny.
I do, but not very frequent. And usually when I do, it's like the first 10 minutes and then I move on. I feel like, I had 2 young children, so it's kind of really difficult for me to sort of just sit and watch the news like that. And I just find that the first 10 minutes is usually the most useful for me. And that's probably maybe 3 times a week at most.
Lydia?
Well, let's just say that I sometimes choose to watch and not. It's on in my house often. But yeah, sometimes I'll watch WGN in the morning because it's a half news and half comedy. It's fun. I get to know what's going on with Anna around town. I also love WTTW. I had it on actually this morning. So, I try to cross-reference locally and nationally, and I also try to cross-reference as a researcher. I treat my media like I treat my research, right? You better check your references. You better read a bunch of different perspectives, and you better follow the money trail because you're likely find out more information than you know.
Next.
Just to be clear, the question is, how often do you watch TV news?
Local TV news in this case.
Virtually never. I don't have cable. I hardly watch any live television whatsoever, maybe a game here and there. But I subscribe to virtually every outlet's newsletter and read them pretty regularly, some more than others. So I stay abreast of what each outlet's doing. I just don't watch TV.
A relative this week asked me worriedly, if young people aren't buying newspapers or watching TV newscasts, where are they getting their news? Manny?
Unfortunately, TikTok. But it's not just TikTok as well. Yeah, some Instagram, I think those are sort of like the model. As a reporter who takes a long time to sort of write stories and publish stories, it can be frustrating sometimes to sort of see TikTok creators, talk about the news while referencing stories that we produce without giving any sort of credit or sort of acknowledgement of what's done behind the scenes. But with that said, I still believe that, we have heavy readers in our communities and our society. For example, I did a lengthy 4,500 word story on a local alderman on the Southwest side. A lot of it was pretty dense in what we're talking about, but that story did extremely well online and it was being circulated in social media. So I do think the attention span is still there. But we have to sort of pair that with how we sort of disseminate those stories. So through TikTok, through Instagram Reels, whatever the case is, people like short form video, and it's something that we should be leveraging.
Lydia?
I hope they're calling your grandparents to get some of their news.
It goes the other way, my time. 6, 7. I learned that from the kids.
It's an intergenerational exchange, right? I think, I operate more at the later end of the life course. But I think the future generation, it is social media. It's definitely on Facebook, right? We all know that the Facebook is for the cool people, right? Like you heard Gatlin. But yeah, I think even and I think I think about media and I think about communication, and when I work with younger students, they don't want written feedback, right? They don't want written work. They want video, short snippets that they get to the point. And I feel like that's probably a trope and theme that's true about all ways of consuming information.
Not to sound like broken record, but newsletters. Newsletters. We heard Monica say that Axios is up to 140,000. Manny's Block Club, of course, is doing gangbusters on their newsletters and has for some number of years. And I think there's a lot of folks younger to be had with that product. And I just to say, yes, we all need to get news in front of people on Instagram and TikTok, if only to lessen the brain rot you get otherwise.
I should say that we have demo surveys of our newsletter. It is mostly white, over 55 homeowners, college educated. We're hoping to get more, and we love everyone in that demographic. But we would love to get some younger people too. And so, like, if I leave court, let's say I'm leaving federal court, and the judge has just made a big decision, I have started to do a minute video. Hi, I live in Dirksen Federal Building right now, and Judge Sarah Ellis has just decided blah, 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 blah. And I get that up. Then I go and I write my Axios story. Or if there's a big temporary restraining order that is like way too complicated, I actually get to write a 700-word story. I will sit on my back porch and say, here's what the temporary restraining order says. You have to say 2 times, I'm going to spray you with tear gas before you tear gas people. You have to, have your number if you are an immigration agent. You have to not have a face mask. And so I'll make that video for a demographic that wants to see it in video. And then I'll write the story, because you do have to meet people where they are. And some of these news stories and some of these policies are too important to say, well, they don't want to read it, screw them. You got to find some way to get the information to people.
Right, just my problem with video is that to consume video, or audio for that matter, requires an investment in real time. It's very hard to skim. You can play it, at 1.5 speed. But if you press play on a video or a podcast, you're committing to a certain amount of linear time that you're going to spend consuming information. Whereas
down to 1 minute.
With text, I can skim. I can be in and out in 10 seconds, see if I'm interested or not. What am I missing?
Well, that's why they tell you to keep the video down to 1 minute. I recently...
Still, it's a whole minute. I could, if you wrote that text, I could skim it.
It's so funny because I just started doing this geriatric gymnastics series where I want to get back every single one of the moves I had when I was 17 before I turned 57 next month. And now I've got a really sore back. Anyway, so I do these videos. I get to the gymnastics place. Hey, this is Monica. It's week 4. I'm really feeling weak. I really hope I get my flip flop today. And that's like 15 seconds. And then I cut to me doing all these flips. My father was just watching at this party. He's like, how long am I going to have to watch you talking about it? Let's get to the flips. And so I'm like, Dad, the whole thing is like 1 minute, 15 seconds. And so you're right. People are like, why do I have to listen to you talking? Show me the action.
So don't talk to me about attention spans of young people. It's the old people here. Manny, any thoughts on this?
I think that's very true. I think people, look, I'm in the younger side of things, and I tend to watch everything in 2x speed. It's insane. So there's just a bunch of just blurring out of words that your brain just somehow learns to register. And I think that's the same thing with like YouTube or TikTok or all of these stuff. You have these young folks who are just simply holding down the screen to sort of speed up the language and get through what they need to get through fairly quickly. And I think that's part of that as well. I agree with you though. I am more of a reader and will continue doing that, but I do acknowledge that exists.
Lydia, is this a generational thing? I mean, is it? Am I wrong to suggest that old people have a shorter attention span than young people when it comes to new media?
I mean, we could go into the whole business of brain and neuroscience, and
we have another half hour.
You don't want to lecture. I mean, I think it depends on thinking about continuity, right? I mean, there are changes that happen in our brain that are normal and generalized slowing as we age, but I think it depends. I personally, anecdotally, in my work and in my research and in working with older adults, I feel like older adults have a better attention span. I compare with some of my younger students, right? And the question about video versus written word, I think about multitasking, right? People are consuming, they're listening, they're watching, and they're doing stuff before other things. Like they're not just sitting reading. And so I think there's the multitasking piece too, that maybe some of the younger generations, on average, controlling for all variables, are a bit better with.
I'll just say this. I can read and watch or listen to TV at the same time, whereas I can't do video or TikTok and watch TV at the same time. Max, want to jump in here?
Yeah, so I agree with Manny. 2x speed on your videos is great. Twice as spending the same amount of time. If you just tap on the right side of the screen, hold it down, and it plays really fast. It's good if you haven't done it. I don't know what the generational attention gap is, what the divide is. I know my fridge readers are older and my other users are younger. So is my attention span worse than someone who's twice my age? Maybe. I think we're also pulled in 7 trillion different directions in our generation than you all were, where I have like 7 chat things going off in a given day and my email inbox is on fire and I'm getting phone calls and I'm actually still trying to do my day job in between all of that. Not to say that folks weren't busy before, but I think the number of things pulling at your attention now is far more significant than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago.
I'm not on social media at all. So when you refer it to newsletters, are those somehow available on email?
Yeah, those are email. So
Okay, like what I get from Wednesday Journal every week. That's that, right?
that's that. Yeah. And you should subscribe to Charlie's too.
At mine.
I subscribe to everyone's email, but I mean that's central to what I do is looking at email. Another question back there.
Hi, I am actually a longtime, 12-year freelancer for the Wednesday Journal Review and the Landmark. So I know obviously at sessions like this, we talk a lot about how are we going to retain readers. To be completely transparent, I, for 2 years, was a full-time newspaper editor for a now defunct company based in the North Shore. And I jumped through what journalists call the dark side, right? For financial and personal security reasons. My question is, do we feel as though print, radio, television, etc., news outlets are really doing, as they say in the psych world, the inner work, the navel gazing to see how we can retain quality millennial and Gen Z journalists? Because honestly, in order to crank out that work, you need quality journalists, but the pay isn't there. So how are these media outlets, frankly, looking at how can you retain that talent in order to keep that readership and viewership base? Because a lot of us have jumped ship to public relations.
Max, this sounds like one tailor-made for you.
We heard from Monica that her predecessors were retiring with, $1 million income. And once upon a time in this line of work, the money was there. Things changed. It got worse. It is now we kept peeling back layer after layer, and we kept getting worse and worse at this, and the incomes got lower and lower until I think we may have bottomed out, and we're starting to see the shift. I said earlier, I think the world of nonprofit news outlets. I think the world of them, not just because I run one, but because I'm a huge fan, virtually all of them. I think that's what's next. We need to get really good at recognizing we can't chase 15% profit margins and still run a sustainable business that still pays people well. I don't see how that can possibly work. Maybe someone smarter than me will figure it out down the line. But for the time being, nonprofit news outlets are doing a really great job fundraising and paying reporters a relatively healthy salary. Are they paying them $1 million incomes? No. But the executives of those organizations aren't ever going to make $1 million either. And that's okay. We're not here for the income. We're here for the impact. So to answer your question, I think you need to support your local nonprofit newsroom, not just me, but also the Blog Club and also all the other ones, so they can raise enough funds to continue growing their operation and continue paying their reporters what they deserve.
You mentioned demographics of an audience. Are you at all concerned about the demographics of the content created? Once upon a time when you had a newspaper, you see a byline, click on the name on the byline, and you get information about that person. It's getting farther and farther and farther to do that. Does that cause you concern?
Manny, what is Blog Club, for instance, doing to connect reporters with audience?
I think that's a very good question in terms of just building trust, right? And Blog Club has is doing the work and trying to do that with our reporters that sort of fan out throughout the city. But more than that, it's about engaging the community itself. So holding reader events where we sort of mingle with our readers and at a bar or at a coffee shop, hosting book events or book clubs that we have, right, where we read books with our readers. And just in general, sort of like having these, in the last couple of years, we've been doing sort of these block parties where folks come out, they meet the reporters there. Like I'm checking tickets as they walk in, and you're like, oh, you're this person. I'm like, kind of, I guess. But it's really about sort of meeting folks where they're at, not just when you're reporting itself, but in the afterwards of reporting. But with that said, if I could just say this really quick, I share your concern deeply about trusting folks that are on the internet. I mean, with the rise of AI and sort of like these fake content creators, it's really hard to sort of figure out who is real and who is not. And it really takes more, extra steps to sort of identifying a real reporter versus someone who's just yelling into a phone.
I 100% agree. And Axios, we try to do a lot of public events. I was so pleased that Charlie invited me to do this because I love doing face-to-face events. Axios could have come in and hired a bunch of people who they could have paid very bad salaries. They came in and, let's just say I'm glad to be paid what I'm worth after 49 years in the biz. 42 years in the biz. And they wanted to make sure we were known quantities in Chicago, that people could look back at decades of our work to know if, we're trustworthy people. You can click on our names and it says our email, but also our biography. But there's a huge danger as AI is coming in and I met this guy at this event last night, and he got laid off at Voice of America, and now he's trading large language models to write news stories. And I said, I really liked you until you told me that, mister. So you're going to have things written by machines that are stealing original reporting, bits and pieces of it that we do. And that's really scary. So I absolutely agree with you. It's so important to be able to get to know people in your community, see that community, know they're real people, and know their track record.
Let's talk about AI. It's here. It ain't going away. Lydia, how does that affect your research? What has your research shown about AI and the way it affects and interacts with humans?
Yeah, I mean, there's, the data are rich for sure. I got a hold of publications, back research looking at the mental health implications of AI utilization. Some of those are grim. I know AI is changing the world of research, right? I mean, for example, I write NIH grants for a living. That's a party right now. But we've been given you can only submit six applications because AI is so prevalent right now in the utilization. People are able to crank out 50 NIH proposals that in the good old days would take a long time. So I think it's here. It's here to stay. It's everywhere. I work at a university. I think, for my understanding, embrace and do what you can to empower yourself around literacy, know what you're consuming, know the origin of it if you can. I mean, I think we need to arm ourselves, with knowledge. Knowledge is power, but it's here and it's not going anywhere. So,
Max, how's it playing out at Newswell?
So, I mean, in our local newsroom, AI is virtually nowhere to be found. I will say, for the time being, that's a good thing. I think that's right. We need to approach it with caution, but we also need to be realistic that the Dow hit its newest high again for the 100 trillionth time because everyone is just going gangbusters every time they put OpenAI in their earnings reports. And what that means is I think it's coming for us whether we want it to or not. I am not alone going to be able to defend my newsroom from whatever AI is bringing, and I need to approach that with caution and realism and integrate it in an ethical way that helps produce a better news report and helps readers get better coverage. I don't know what that is yet. If I don't hurry up and figure it out, it's going to happen without me. So that's the real challenge. It is moving far faster than I can keep up with it. I'm not an AI expert, obviously. Most people aren't, but it's already impacting just about everyone's job, so we better figure it out.
AI is many different things. And I will say that for transcribing interviews, so I give you a Mayor Brandon Johnson press conference, and as he's speaking, it will transcribe it for me so that I can pull quotes, something called Otter. So that's AI. And I will admit that when I FOIA huge amounts of data from the city, and I get 90,000 lines of spreadsheet data back, and I want to know, okay, which of these wards has the highest, lung cancer rate, I will ask it to initially crunch that data, and then I will go check myself. And in that way, it can be used for good to analyze data, to find the bad guys, to find patterns, to find corruption. But the idea that a lot of people wanted to start writing your news stories is terrifying and horrible to me. And then the deep fakes, the potential for deep fakes is terrifying, so you won't know what is real anymore.
Yeah, and 100% agree with everything that's said here. Journalists have used AI for years before sort of this, right? When we think about Microsoft Word check, right? You get sort of a misspelling that program's letting you know, like, you misspelled it wrong there, right? And that's super important, sort of making sure we kind of had clean copy and stuff like that. At Black Club, we sort of have formed this committee of sorts to kind of figure out how does our newsroom interact with the, this AI, quote unquote revolution. Obviously, we don't enter any kind of stories through it or anything like that. It's not being used for our writing process. But, just like with the rise of the internet and how it sort of clashed with the news business, I think we have to start thinking about how are we going to leverage it for the future. I don't have an answer for that at this moment, obviously, but it's something that we should be discussing.
As journalists increasingly come under threat of legal or, in some cases, physical assault from the federal government or sympathetic to some people in the federal government, how much are you concerned about your own lives and livelihoods or the lives and livelihoods of those who, in your case, work for you? Monica.
Well, I mean, anybody who covered Operation Midway Blitz, you saw people taking pictures of you. You saw people in fatigues taking pictures of you. I had tear gas thrown at me. I had to get a gas, I had to learn how to use a gas mask. It was a very scary time, as probably everyone knows, really terrifying time. And I'm sure the things I wrote where I fact-checked the Department of Homeland Security did not endear me to the administration. Many journalists had things a lot harder, but it's a scary time when we are being called the enemy of the people.
Manny, you've been on the front lines.
Yeah, and the same thing, right? We were trying to sort of correct the record and really provide a clear picture of what's happening in our neighborhoods around us, right? When you see, an undocumented immigrant sort of just hanging out at Home Depot for a day job and then suddenly being thrown on the ground, it is our responsibility to sit there and try to report that out accurately. And often that comes at not only, with attacks from this current administration, but also attacks from people in our own community, right? Like personal experience here, like receiving death threats have become common. And, we've seen the rise of political violence in this country as well. And among journalists, across the globe. So it's something that concerns me deeply going into the future, but it shouldn't, stop us or sway us from doing what we decided to do in our lives.
Lydia, the stereotype has been, that's not just a stereotype. Anyone who's looked at coverage knows that senior citizens are an essential part of the resistance, as it's been dubbed, to the present administration. Does their security, their safety come into any of the work that you've been doing?
I'm not on the front lines per se. As I said, my work of late has really been in the research space. And so I feel like the work we're doing is impactful. While I don't necessarily fear for my life, and I think all of you who are willing to go onto the front lines and do the hard work, there's all kinds of talk in higher ed and in the space. It's noted with the work you're doing and if you're for the resistance or against it, right? And so we see it in higher ed. The censorship is real.
Max, what about the security of your reporters out there interacting with everything that's happened?
It scares the hell out of me. It really does. If you don't think this is a terrifying time to be on the front lines, you're not reading closely enough. And I hope you do start reading closely enough. When we covered Broadview last year, we sent reporters out to Broadview last year at the ICE detention facility. They're 23, 24-year-old kids doing their jobs, and they are literally putting themselves in harm's way to get the news coverage that we need for you all. It scares me. The question is, how do we protect them? Yes, we provide them with PPE when they need it, and we provide them with policies, but, we saw what happens. We see what happens at times when you put yourself on the front lines. We saw it in Minnesota. We saw it elsewhere. It scares the hell out of me. That's the truth.
Lydia, what do older adults need from local media right now, and are they getting it?
Getting information is important. I think the word community comes to mind. I think we all need, not just older adults, but we need more community. And I really feel like local media and local journalism and local reporting has the power to help us continue to repair community that's been so damaged in recent years.
All right, and now for the question you've all been waiting for, because it's the title of this session. What do each of you see as the future of local media? And I ask you to look ahead, not to just, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, but what's next for each of your fields? Max, we'll start with you.
Again, not to sound like a broken record, but nonprofit news and great newsletters, come on, that's where we're going. That's what we're already doing. I do think community news especially is best served with scaled nonprofit support. So I think we see that at Block Club. We see that here at Newswell Chicago. We see it elsewhere across the country. I think that's where the industry is going. Will the bigger players be able to sustain themselves in a for-profit setting while their audience is still big enough to sustain? Yeah, they will for a while, maybe not forever. But the smaller pubs like us, we rely on reader support as a major revenue stream. That's philanthropy from you all. And I think that's going to stay for some time. And I think that's good. It means I need to interact with each and every one of you to ask you for your $5 a month to sustain my work. And that means you get to tell me what you do and don't like about what we're doing. I think that kind of retail relationship is really valuable in producing community news. I think that's the heart of it. And here I am, we're in Oak Park. We're Wednesday Journal country. And I think it's great. I think this is exactly how it should work. And I'm glad that I think this is how it's going to continue work, both here and at a larger scale.
Okay, but now the future.
The first charge is to sustain where we already are. We got to make the Wednesday Journal strong. We got to make the Landmark really strong, the Review strong, and the Austin Weekly strong. That is our first charge. Once we do that, and we will expand. My ambition personally, and yes, I report to bigger organizations, so someone might, step on my toes along the way. My ambition is to build a resilient local news ecosystem in the Chicago suburbs. And I mentioned before, I think there's a gap. And again, we're seeing in Arlington Heights that gap may get bigger. I think that is reason for me to believe there's an opportunity for us to do something meaningful here. Charlie wants me to say we're going to expand to a certain space, but my ambition is to build a resilient and bigger, sustainable local news ecosystem in suburban Chicago.
I just want to hear about the future, that's all. Lydia, what's the future of gerontological research and gerontological, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Work on how people interact with the news media?
I think, again, having an appreciation, my thought is the future looks more community-oriented, mission-driven, hopefully interdisciplinary, right? I think about aging. When I approach any opportunity or challenge related to aging from a problem research perspective, I don't dare do it without an interdisciplinary team. And I really feel like the future of media, local media particularly, is an appreciation for that multi-pronged perspective.
Manny, what's ahead for Block Club? Or if you want to expand it beyond Block Club, what's next?
I hate predicting the future because I'm always wrong. But I speaking generally, I think if we are able to maintain what we all have come to know as the free press, I think eventually the pendulum is going to swing in the opposite direction. Right now, everyone's focused on this new media in terms of, I shouldn't say new media, this social media aspect of our lives and how we interact with it and the short attention spans. I think it's going to eventually tire folks out, and there's going to be a pendulum swing back to the old ways of how we interact with news and how we interact with media in general. I think there's going to be a lot of pain leading up to that. shrinkage the way we've been experiencing it as we are happen. But I hope that it goes back to the other direction.
Monica.
I hope that people, I think we're going to see the rise of AI, and we're going to see the rise of deep fakes, and we're going to see the rise, and to some people's benefit, of people saying, well, what's real? What's the truth anyway? And hopefully that will lead a pendulum swing. And you guys should copyright this now, get the domain real intelligence news instead of artificial intelligence news from real people who are accountable to you, who aren't robots. People are going to crave the kind of on-the-ground reporting of things we have eyewitnessed and we have seen firsthand, hopefully. And they're hopefully going to understand it's got so much value that they want to pay for it. After we gave away the farm and just said, hey, all the news is free, no more subscriptions, a whole generation decided that you don't have to pay for news. I'm hoping that it'll swing back and say, you know what? It's worth it. It's worth it for the truth, for things that I can rely on, things that are accountable for me to pay again. And maybe that will mean, living wage salaries for journalists again, and we can retain the best and the brightest, and people won't have to take jobs that they don't really love, let's say in PR. So, nothing wrong with PR, but a lot of people want to be full-time journalists. And the jobs have disappeared, and a lot of them don't pay a great living wage anymore.
And with that, I think it's time to go to questions from our audience.
With all the polarization that we're experiencing, where do you think that's going to go?
It's a really good question, because you do have half the nation that sometimes sees a green turtle and thinks it's purple, and you can't convince them that it's not purple. So our boss in DC says, we give the clinical truth and that's it. And I wish people believed that, but I don't know how to convince people that this is an orange or it's a yellow hair clip. Other than to say this, I've got a long track record, and this is yellow to me.
I don't know. I think if we knew that answer, we wouldn't be in this position that we are in today. I believe the fever will break eventually. I hope it does. The only thing we can do is sort of just keep reporting on the facts. And I will say, when we see out there these folks sort of like come to realization that they've either been lied to or misled or had joined a cult by accident, I think it's important that we don't shame them. We kind of sort of welcome them back into the fold, even though we want to sort of throw tomatoes at them. We probably should not.
I study resilience in my work as a gerontologist, and I think, again, continuing to speak truth to power is important. And everything's polarized right now, and so I think empiricism is important, the facts are important, and to just keep playing it out there, challenging the structure, recognizing the patriarchy and how it's operating is the work that we have to continue to do every day, one foot in front of another, in hopes we can make change.
I think it's a very complex question. I think my 2 cents is the reason media is so polarized anyway is because some number of years ago, someone realized views go up if you get crazy, right? And that the further right you got on Fox, the more views you got, and the further left you got on the other guys, the more views you got. I think one of the reasons I keep talking about the benefits of a nonprofit news organization is because we're not beholden to the profits that those cable news networks were looking for. And I think, they probably found it. Fox News is the highest rated cable news program in the country. It does really well. And they make plenty of money, not as much as they used to, but still plenty, and still plenty more than we do. I think removing the profit incentive, as is the case with us, helps quite a bit, removing your need to say things that your viewers are going to want to see, or in my case, my readers are going to want to read. I think that's part of it. I think the profit motive, removing the profit motive, is very helpful. I'll say beyond that, and I said at the top, it's very complex. That clip is yellow, but it's also not red. It's also not blue. And depending on how you tell the story, people will react differently. Each of those statements is equally true, and each audience segment wants to hear it said not blue or not red or yellow. So it gets really complex trying to tell a true story. And the facts are sometimes we may tell a story and it's true. And if you were to look at a counterpart on the other side of the aisle or another newspaper that covers it slightly differently, they're still factually correct. But the way you describe it gets different. And that's one of the real challenges that I frankly don't have a clear answer to.
Polarization is the natural state of media in this country. It was a relatively short period of time. Some have called it the age of mass media, roughly 1950 or so to 1995 or so, from the rise of the TV networks to the rise of the internet, in which a sort of objective journalism became what most of us saw. 3 TV networks, a handful of newspapers in towns. But before that, in Chicago, for instance, in the early part of the 1900s, there were 9 or 10 newspapers. And you picked the one that most closely matched your political inclination. So in some ways, we are now back to the future.
And I think transparency is so important. How did I get this information? Well, I got it from this government agency that has this track record doing this. Here's how I crunched these numbers. Here's, how I put this with this here. And here's who I am and here's my history. So you can judge me on all of that rather than just like, here's my opinion. I'm on TikTok, figure out if I'm right or wrong.
How do you approach dealing with truth in the context of, well, big businesses, they do gobble up people and they don't generally tell the truth about why they're doing it.
I'll be honest with you. I've been doing this 42 years. And I have never, ever thought about any business, any advertiser, any boss, and what they would think about what I wrote when I've investigated bad guys or written about anything when I wrote it. And one time, I'll be completely honest, one time I had a story pulled. It was at the Tribune. I'd been investigating Ticketmaster. I'd been investigating how much higher their service fees are in Chicago, where they had a monopoly, versus other cities. It was a Janet Jackson tour. Here's how much service fees were for Janet Jackson here. Chicago, they were mysteriously higher. They would just charge you what the market would bear. I was told the Tribune had an arrangement with Ticketmaster where every time someone clicked from our site to Ticketmaster, we got some money. Suddenly, my freaking editors got cold feet about a story I'd been working on for 2 months. That's the only time in 42 years I'd ever seen anything remotely like interference on my stories. So I don't think about it. I say, what do the facts show? What are people's motives? That's what I write. Anybody messes with it, they hear from me, and it's never happened.
I'm beginning to feel as if there's too much pressure from above on these media outlets. And do you guys feel that? Is there somebody above you somewhere that you're worried about?
I would say, like Monica, I work in sort of the nonprofit world of news, right? So I don't necessarily have those corporate overlords that you're sort of like the Ellisons that we're talking about here, right? Let's just say it. I share your concerns. I see what the FCC is doing to broadcast, because of they don't like a certain thing that a certain commentator or comedian said. And that is extremely concerning as we look towards sort of the future of the free press, like I said earlier. But I do think it's our responsibility to sort of continue what we're doing and reporting on the fact that there are these corporate zealots who are out here monopolizing and buying up media to sort of disseminate their information and to sort of educate the people in the world that are interested in knowing what media is saying what and the slant or bent that they may have.
I just was gonna, in my simplistic version of it, I think about media and food, right? Ultra processed food, ultra processed media, and not to go back to community. But again, I think if you better know who grew your tomato, where the seed came from, and what they sprayed on it. The similar attention to detail is important when it comes to media. But corporate greed, we're owned by corporations. They're alive and well, right?
I'll say 2 things. One of your questions was, do you feel pressure from above? In earlier jobs, at one point in my life, I was chief of staff at Tribute Publishing, the owner of the Chicago Trip and its papers throughout the country. Yes, I felt pressure not from dark forces from over yonder, but like pressure to deliver on profit targets. And that makes you do crazy things. It does. And you saw it play out. There were layoffs the years I was there. There were buyouts. There were this, there was that. There were transactions that make you scratch your head, so on and so forth. So yeah, there's pressure from above. What do you do to address that? You build with your neighbors, with your colleagues from the ground up. And I'm in this room with you all, general manager of your Wednesday Journal, and I'm here to build that paper back with you. I want to make it strong again. It has a very strong 45-year legacy. I think that's how we address it. We do it together. We do it in rooms like this, and we do it starting with the small scale. The better we can do at the ground level, the stronger it will be as we progress.
You've talked quite a bit about how things in the media have changed. Can you go in a little more detail? I guess I have then two questions about detail. One, have enrollments in traditional journalism programs, college, shrunken? And two, currently, are you finding it incredibly hard in the media to hire reporters, journalists?
I'll just add, as a sometime journalism professor, about a decade ago, I taught 4 semesters at Roosevelt University, required quotas. Enrollment dropped from 10 in the first semester to 7 the next semester to 5 the next semester to 3 the semester after that. That said, my friends in journalism tell me that enrollment in journalism has been on the way up in recent years. Something of a parallel, I think, to what happened when I was in journalism school, which was the Watergate era.
I actually don't know the enrollment numbers, but I do know that a friend who teaches political reporting at Medill School of Journalism said he couldn't get enough people for his class, but they all want to know how to write about themselves. So God knows what that's going to produce. And I unsent journalism students all the time, and I want to tell them the future is bright. You know, you're going to make a lot of money, and there are tons of jobs. But I have too much respect for them. I said, look, it's going to be rough. The jobs have shrunken, and the pay has shrunken. And you know, I think there was All the President's Men effect in your generation, Charlie, and that there was a Spotlight. Was it that movie that prompted a whole bunch of young idealistic kids, unfortunately, to plopped out tens of thousands of dollars for journalism school? I think they're still going for. You know, I just wish I had better news from them.
When I graduated, if you wanted to commit journalism, if you wanted to write or broadcast or photograph or video record something and have it be seen by a lot of people, you had to be hired by an existing news organization, someone who had a printing press or an antenna. And the upside of this is if you truly have a passion to communicate now, you can do it. You can reach the whole world from a TikTok account, from an email newsletter, from a blog. And so for those who are truly driven, there are opportunities now that didn't exist 50 years ago.
What about a more global or a more national? You know, I love the Wednesday Journal. I read Blog Club. You don't want to know how many things I read. But where do I get reliable national news?
Yeah, I think it's just finding your favorites, right? Like if I'm looking for sort of a global national news, I'm a paid subscriber of like Bloomberg, for example, just because I like their investigative reporting. I like their City Lab. I like even just, you know, I'm interested in the markets as well. So I feel like that sort of encompasses everything that it interests me. And I love, for example, like Jason's great reporter that I follow a lot of. So it's just, I guess, finding reporters that you genuinely like and checking out their outlet and seeing if that's the national outlet that you would like to subscribe to.
Follow smart people on social media. And your definition of smart may be different from my definition of smart. But as you encounter people who are saying things that make sense to you, see who they are following on Blue Sky or Twitter if you're still there, or Facebook if you're still there, or TikTok, and follow those people. There are still, even at the most compromised news organizations, reporters of principle who are doing excellent work. Certainly there's The Guardian now, which is a nonprofit at the national level. But even at the Washington Post, whose email newsletters I get, and which, you know, has been compromised in some ways, there are still talented reporters who are doing great reporting, objective reporting. Follow those people, share those stories, and spread the word.
Can we hear it for the panelists?
And that's the way it went Saturday, May 9th, 2026, with gerontologist Dr. Lydia Manning, Max Reinsdorf, general manager of the Newswell Chicago newspapers, Manny Ramos of Block Club Chicago, and Monica Eng of Axios Chicago. If you're not already subscribing, Go to sub.chicagopublicsquare.com and get those newsletters so many people seem to like. Free in your inbox daily. I'm Charlie Meyerson. Thanks for listening.